Good morning. It is Thursday, December 24, 2015. Merry Christmas. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, as the year comes to an end, the International Organization for Migration announces a stark milestone this week. The number of refugees crossing into Europe just passed 1 million. As the wave of violence to hit the Holy Land claims more lives in Jerusalem, the West Bank city of Bethlehem is trying to celebrate Christmas beyond a wall and heightened security. And later on in the show, something lighter, a look at this winter's blockbuster movies to look out for. Good morning, I'm Yael Lavie, and we begin and take a closer look today at Europe, where the International Center for Migration announced a milestone this week, namely the number of refugees who crossed into Europe in 2015 has passed the 1 million mark. The figures show that the vast majority of illegal arrivals, as they are called, have come by sea over the Mediterranean. 1 in every 2 of those crossing the Mediterranean this year, 500,000 people, were Syrians escaping the grinding 4-year civil war in their homeland. More than 4 million Syrians have fled the conflict, creating the worst refugee crisis seen in 25 years, according to the United Nations. The Mediterranean, where nearly 4,000 people died this year, has been called the deadliest route for migrants on our planet by UN officials. Earlier this week, 11 more, including 3 children, died when their boat capsized while making the journey from Turkey to Greece. That is something that happens nearly once a week. European leaders have hashed out a plan to resettle 160,000 refugees, but a massive gap remains between what they have pledged to do and what remains to be done. And of course, public sentiment toward migrants remained mixed across the continent. Let's first take a look at the following report about the startling new figure of people vying for Europe as they flee the Middle East, and break it down after that.
More than 1 million migrants fled to Europe this year, the International Organization of Migration has announced. It is probably Europe's biggest wave of migration since the Second World War.
We need a new deal between the international community, with Europe in particular, and Syria's neighbors.
The vast majority, over 800,000, arrived by sea to Greece. Some 150,000 came to Italy, and a smaller number of people reached Spain, Malta, and Cyprus. About 34,000 couldn't cross the Mediterranean and made their way through the land crossing the Turkish-Bulgarian border. The large number is attributed to Syrians fleeing their country's civil war.
Those that reject Syrian refugees, and especially if they are Muslim, are the best allies of the propaganda and the recruitment of extremist groups.
The 1 million milestone refers only to Europe and does not include Turkey, for example, where 2.2 million Syrian refugees currently live, or Lebanon, which accepted more than 1 million refugees, who now form 20% of the country's total population. One of the biggest challenges for both migrants and Europeans is the difference in mentality, which led to the creation of a German TV talk show in Arabic that helped refugees integrate into German society with a simple message: follow the rules.
There was a strong response from both sides, the German side and the Arabic side, to our episodes. For example, the episode about sex in Germany, when we talked about relations between men and women before marriage and sexual freedom in Germany. At the same time, the response in general from the Arabic side was very positive, because the majority of the Arabic viewers say the program is very positive and very important.
While US and Russia leaders debate the future of Syria, the EU predicts 3 million migrants will arrive in the continent in 2016.
While the numbers are shocking, each one of them represents a human story of escape from evil. And I'm joined via Skype first from Turkey by Abu Dandashi, who fled Syria in 2012, now with little hope of returning. Mr. Dandashi, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
I want to thank you for joining us. You know, we speak so many mornings about the issue of refugees and whatnot, and we've never heard your personal story. When did you get to Turkey and how?
Well, actually, I left Syria in September 2013. I was actually living in Tartus at the time, after I had been displaced from my hometown of Homs. This was in the aftermath of the regime's use of chemical weapons on 2 Damascus suburbs. And at the same time, we were hearing these increasingly horrific stories of coming out of Raqqa, of what Daesh was doing. It felt like the country was stuck between a maniac, Bashar al-Assad, using chemical weapons on one hand, and this is the barbaric Islamic State on the other. it just didn't feel tenable to me to actually stay in Syria at that point. So that's when I made the decision in September 2013 to leave to Turkey.
That goes without saying. How did you get to Turkey?
Well, actually, normally I just went to Lebanon. I hired a private driver, went to Lebanon, spent 2 weeks over there catching up with my relatives who had been displaced from our ancestral village of Tel Kala in summer. And after 2 weeks, I then took a plane to Istanbul.
Now, I want to ask you, because you have still family members, I'm assuming, in the Middle East, in Syria and in Lebanon, I'm assuming, correct?
I was one of the last members of my extended family to leave Syria. I mean, 90% of the people in my home village were displaced. They're all over the Middle East now. Some have found refuge in Europe. Most are in Lebanon, though.
90% of your village. If you're looking at these numbers that are fleeing Syria, that are fleeing the Middle East at this point in time, I mean, it goes without saying, I know your hope and wishes that it'll end, but do you see yourself staying in Turkey? Do you see yourself staying away from Syria? Is there anything to go back to?
Away from Syria, I do not foresee any possibility of going to Syria under the present circumstances, nor any imaginable set of circumstances. As far as staying in Turkey, if you had asked me 6 months ago what the prospects for Syrians were in Turkey, I would have said cautiously optimistic. I unfortunately no longer believe that.
Why?
Well, until now, we're not getting any work permits. There was supposed to be a plan to gradually introduce work permits for Syrians. The government backtracked on that. They declared that unemployment was too high in Turkey, and it was not going to. It was politically not possible to give work permits to Syrians. We now have constraints on us on moving between city to city. It's very difficult now for Syrians. There is no framework or plan to integrate us into Turkish society. Now, there is no lack of compassion here in Turkey for Syrians. No lack of compassion at all. Right. The problem is there is a lack of planning. You have a massive problem here with the refugee crisis, and you need a plan equal to the magnitude of the problem. Unfortunately, there is no plan. There is no plan to integrate us. There is no long-term plan to deal with the refugee crisis, and that's why Syrians who are afraid of ending up stateless and their children ending up stateless a few years down the road are moving to Europe.
And I'm Mr. Dandashi, moving to Europe, no plan and no strategy, I think, is one of the things that, is terrifying to all of us listening to these stories. Millions more most likely coming your way. Mr. Dandashi, first of all, I want to thank you. I wish you all the best, and I'm assuming that you and I will speak more throughout the coming year. But good luck to you, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
I'm joined in studio by Channel 1 Foreign Affairs reporter Oren Nahari. Good morning to you. I-24 News contributor Ami Kaufman. Good morning. And with us also photographer, filmmaker Leo Sperandeo.
Thank you.
Who just came back from Greece. But I'm going to go straight to the man of the hour who I enjoy asking questions, Mr. Oren Nahari of Channel 1. 1 million, more than 1 million crossing into Europe, migration of nations. Can Europe deal with these people coming in? And what do you foresee this number, this milestone amount of people in Europe doing to the continent over the course of the next several months?
First of all, they can. There's no question about it. We are talking about the European Union is close to 500 million people. It's very rich. Still, they can deal with it. Now the question is of will, not only will of governments, but will of people. And that's totally different thing. We're talking now about Syrians. Now, beside the point that there's no more such a thing as Syria, what happened in France drove this issue back a lot, because it happened as many people feared and said so, that yes, some terrorists will use faked passports, will use this flow with this river of people to infiltrate Europe.
But all of them, most of them were homegrown, which is important. We're homegrown terrorists, so to speak. We're not refugees.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But still, the fear that some of them are or will be the new homegrown terrorists down the road is a fear. And we're talking about Syrians. Now, some of them are backers of the regime, the murderous regime of Assad, and others are Sunni, and others are, let's say, Yazidis and Kurds, etc., etc. Not only that, not all of them are Syrians, but they know that Syrians will be received in Europe as as welcome as can be under the circumstances. If they said they were coming from, I don't know, other countries, let's say Afghanistan or Pakistan or whoever, or African countries, they will not be as welcome, so everybody is a Syrian. So the political will is there, and Merkel gave a sound, humanistic, universal statement.
Right.
She did. And now what's happening? And what's happening is that each country says, okay, we do not want to, and we will not do this. Some said we will, and others said they will not. And many others, they hope that this will pass them by and nobody will say a word. By the way, we are talking about rich countries. We're talking all the time about Europe. We do need to remember that most of them are in Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey. They bear the brand, and Europe does what it does best, meaning writing a check and says, okay, you deal with it. We don't want these people. We don't want this problem in our borders. Okay, so Mr. Erdogan, you want to be in European Union? You will never be in the European Union. So here's a nice check, $3 billion.
And these $3 billion, that money where we just spoke to Mr. Abu Dandashi, that money given to Turkey to help the refugees, okay? And when he said there's no lack of compassion, is there a strategy in Turkey then, for example, on how to integrate? They have, 2.5 million refugees there?
I do not think that there is a strategy to integrate them into the society. What Turkey wants, as Jordan and Lebanon and other countries, they say, okay, you, the West, and perhaps Russia and others, you are pressuring for a political solution in Syria. So what we want to, let's say, in the post-Assad era, let's say that there is a unified Syria. I do not see it happening. So these people will return to their homes. We have to deal with it for the time being. I do not see Turkey receiving into its border, and why should they, by the way, 2.5-3 million people that they are not of Turkish origins.
Right.
Now, 3 million out of 60 or 70 million is totally different from 1 million between 500 million. And by the way, I see Justin Trudeau just came to power, liberal, nice guy, and Canada, which is an immigration society, receives or says that it will receive 25,000, and everybody applauds. This is not serious.
Why?
Because the number is small.
Because the number are small, yes,
But the message
is still very optimistic. It's an important message.
It is an important message, but if you wanted to make it an important message, so you have to make it.
I agree. Yeah.
Something more than that, and not to mention the United States.
It's much better than
that. And again, so what everybody in the world hopes for is that some solution miraculously will arrive to Syria, and presto, everybody will return to their homes. I do not see it happening.
It's not happening. And not only that, I don't see this stopping. I don't think that this flow of people is going to stop. If it crossed 1 million, we are to assume that this most likely is going to reach maybe 2 million by the end of next year. But one of the most impacted places in Europe, where all these refugees are coming, is the Greek island of Lesbos, with just under half of those entering the continent in 2015, doing so from that island. Leo Sperander recently returned from a visit there, and he came back with some incredible images, a moving video project titled The People of Nowhere. And before we speak to you, let's take a look at what you saw there and what you documented. Leo, it's amazing.
Great work.
I know. Leo, first of all, I want to thank you for being here. You came back from Lesbos, I think approximately a month ago. You went there with Israel, right?
Yes, I went to cover Israel, which I covered before in Nepal in the earthquake, and I meet them again in Lesbos. I spent there 7 days, and I was just moved. I was just torn apart.
Tell me what you saw. I heard. We found you actually through social media. I know you were moved, but at a certain point there, when you're there documenting, at a certain point you dropped your camera. You said you just started helping the people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you cannot stay. In your comfort zone when you see people. When you see people reaching for help, you see their sparkle in the eye. They're just begging for someone to help them. They come desperate. They come wet. Lots of hypothermia cases. You have to just start help. There's not enough people there, not enough volunteers.
You said also, you're working with an Israeli aid company, and I'm assuming that at a certain point you have people coming in from Syria. How is that interaction? Just in terms of Israelis helping Syrians, some of them coming on shore, saw a lot of Israeli flags, and you said you thought that they were coming, that they made a mistake and came into Israel.
Yeah, there was one funny story when a teenager saw those shirts with Israeli flags, and he just thought, I'm in Israel, look at that. But no, you have to understand, people are in a time of crisis, and they don't really care who helps them, to just want to get help and get better. And the people who were treated by the Israeli doctors were just thankful. I saw this father kissing an Israeli nurse on the forehead like she's his daughter, and it was just really nice and really wonderful to see. To
see people helping. I think, how many, when you're standing there on the shore, to me it's just startling to see, and the pictures of the children are exactly what drives the point home. It's families with kids, with babies.
Yes.
As I think that we cannot disregard that. Your pictures, and I think those pictures that actually are the only ones, is the only thing that may make a difference, is I think what has struck us in the media. And the migrant flood into Europe has produced some of the most iconic photographs this year. The photographer chosen by the Guardian newspaper as this year's photographer of the year is Yanis Berakis, who also joins us now via Skype. Yanis, I want to thank you very much for being with us this morning. We have some of your pictures that are coming up here. The Guardian picked you, but you found yourself, I think, in the midst of this drama happening in your homeland, correct?
Yes, correct. I've been covering, refugee crises, wars, and all these situations for over 25 years, but this was the first time that this was happening in my own country. So, the emotional involvement and all this it's very high, and it's not an easy thing to, environment to operate.
Yeah, and that goes without saying. Looking at the picture, one of the pictures that has been making the rounds on social media is of the young baby that you managed to capture, and his father trying to get out of a dinghy. How much time have you spent on those shores? Tell me, when you see these people coming in, what do you do, and how can you, how do you keep the camera up and not just put it down and help them? Which is the million-dollar question that we journalists usually ask ourselves.
Yeah. I heard the photographer before me also talking, and obviously this is a situation where you have to use a little bit of your logic.
Yeah.
And if the situation is calm, there are no waves, and people seem okay. And there are a lot of volunteers, then you stay out of it and you take your pictures. If you need to be involved, then this is something you judge then.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've seen every single photographer, I would say, to drop the cameras down and help at situations. And, obviously I did it myself, but, that's not the important thing, because the important thing is by taking all these pictures,
yes,
and putting them in the newspapers and blogs and all this, we brought people to help. Greeks, Israelis, Dutch, from all over the world. I've been covering the story. I remember I started covering the story early May in Kos. And I can tell you, I was the only person waiting for the refugees on the shore. There were 1 or 2 dinghies coming within 24 hours, and people were coming out asking where are we and if it's okay, and I would tell them, yeah, you're welcome, you're in Greece, no problem. You know, I speak a couple of words of Arabic.
Yeah.
And, you know, within a month or so, few other photographers came. People started coming, locals, then few volunteers in the beginning. At some point, you know, the volunteers flooded the islands in northern Greece, and it's because of those pictures.
No, and I think that goes without saying. Both you and Leo, I think it's those images, the only thing maybe that may drive people into some change or to request change and to create a strategy to help these refugees. Yanis, I want to thank you for joining us this morning from Greece. Amazing pictures and very important work. Leo, same to you. Incredibly important work, and I want to thank you all as we move along.